Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to firstly introduce myself. My name's Andy Rissick. I'm the Group International Director of Sable International. Thanks so much for giving up some of your time today. We will try and keep this webinar brief and get to the point as quickly as possible. We've allowed an hour, but hopefully we'll finish in sort of 45 minutes or so. But just a little bit of housekeeping. There is a tab on the right-hand side of your screen. I think if you want to ask any questions whilst we're speaking, please go ahead, and then we'll just deal with them in the Q&A at the end of the session. So without further ado, Sable International. For those of you who don't know our business, we've been around since 1994, and we pride ourselves as being cross-border specialists, helping expats all over the world with their international requirements, whether it's immigration, cross-border financial services, tax and accounting. And we deal predominantly with South African audience, but we have got clients from all over the world. So I look after our investment migration business, which is responsible for the investor visa program into Ireland, known as IIP. So that's why I'm with you all today, and I have my colleague Sarah Young, who will be giving a very brief and high-level overview of the program and how Sable works with you as a client. And then I'm going to be introducing you to our partners, Andrew Parrish and Pauline McElroy. So Andrew is the Chief Commercial Officer of the actual fund in which you would be required to invest, and he's going to be on hand today to answer questions. And then and he will be giving a presentation straight after Sarah. And then Pauline will be available for the Q&A session. And I'd say Pauline, like Sarah, is where the sort of tire hits the tarmac. She's the one who works with Sarah's team in making sure that everything gets done once a client decides to onboard and proceed with this very interesting program. So I think without further ado, Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you and let you tell everyone about the opportunity that's just become available to continue in the Irish Investor Program. Thanks very much.
Sure, thanks, Andy. So the Irish Immigrant Investor Program is a program which enables investors to secure permanent residency in Ireland, which is known as a Stamp 4 permission. The program was effectively terminated earlier this year on the 15th of February as of close of business. There's been a lot of pressure on many EU member states with reference to these type of residency and citizenship by investment programs, whereby individuals with net wealth can acquire residency and or a pathway to citizenship. At the time, we were given a 90-day window to submit final investments, or investors, I should say, to the program, taking us up to the 15th of May. Since then, the IDLF, our partners, have had some detailed and successful negotiations with the Irish government, and they've been granted a further dispensation to submit last applications up to and including Q4 of this year. This is a very unique opportunity that is not being granted across the realm of companies and options which were originally available as part of this program. The Irish Diaspora Loan Fund has no cap on the number of investors that can still invest. So this really is a very unique opportunity, and it means that this program is therefore available for you and your family if you wish to pursue this journey to a Stamp 4 permission, and so therefore to secure your permanent residency in Ireland. We've been very fortunate to work with the IDLF over the course of the last few years. And we consider ourselves we've got a great partnership with the IDLF. We've actually helped 75% of South African investors on this journey with the IDLF. And so we're really poised. We've got strong relationships. We work very well together to help you on this journey. In terms of why we suggest Ireland as a fantastic opportunity and destination, is it's a fully committed member of Europe and the EU. It's got a superb economy, one of the most competitive economies in the world. It's forever being ranked in terms of the best countries for attracting foreign direct investment. It's home to many Silicon Valley technological companies, making Ireland their European headquarters. It's got next to no unemployment in Ireland, very, very low, especially when you're comparing with South Africa. You're looking at sort of 3%. And those people that are unemployed are potentially those that either are unable to work for specific medical reasons, or that they're at a point where they don't wish to work. English is obviously an official language in Ireland, so it means that it's very easy to head to Ireland to take your qualifications or your career and to actually forge a pathway. And Ireland has superb secondary and tertiary education options, excellent Irish universities. They are renowned for producing a huge number of entrepreneurs throughout the world, and it's really a fabulous destination. So this is me, Sarah Young. I'm the Investment Migration Manager. In terms of the actual investment specifics of this program, so as I mentioned, it's a direct route to securing a stamp 4 visa permission. At the moment, applications are taking around 9 months to be approved. There's no requirement to relocate to Ireland at all, with just 1 day minimum stay per year in Ireland for the first 5 years of your residency. That is enough time in Ireland to meet the requirements of the program. However, the permanent residency permission that you secure does give you the right to live, to work, to study, to retire in Ireland. And so once you have been approved, if you did wish to relocate to Ireland, then you can absolutely do so. You can include a spouse or partner and children up to the age of 24. If your children are over the age of 18, then there is a requirement for them to be enrolled in full-time tertiary education, and they can't be married, and they need to be financially dependent on the main applicant. As I mentioned, this is a really great plan B, but it can easily be turned into a plan A. So you can set this up with just your 1 day a year in Ireland, but if any family members included on the application decide that they do want to relocate to Ireland, then they can absolutely do so. There's also no need for all family members to relocate on the same timeline. So if you've got one child, for example, that potentially wishes to study overseas in Ireland to utilize those superb educational options, then they could go ahead of the family and start building up their 5 years of temporary or residency to be able to naturalize as a citizen. So this is a route which does enable you to proceed with a citizenship application. You would need to build up 5 years of residency. It's considered reckonable residency. For the first 4 years, you don't necessarily need to be permanently in Ireland. You could spend a minimum of 183 days a year in Ireland. There is a point system, so you do need to make sure that you have qualified enough points for your reckonable residency, and that 5th year prior to applying for citizenship, you would need to be in the country full-time. But an Irish citizenship and passport opens up a huge amount of doors. It gives you full options and freedom of movement throughout the EU. So you could live, work, study and retire across any of the 26 EU member states. And due to the Common Travel Area Agreement with the UK, Irish citizens are also afforded permanent residency status in the UK. So you could also go and take up employment in the UK and enjoy a lifestyle there if that was your end goal. It's also, an Irish passport is a very strong passport. It gives you visa-free access to over 188 countries, and there's no language test or any other type of test to be able to proceed to citizenship. In terms of the actual program requirements, so the Irish government has set up this program to attract individuals of high net worth. Investors must be able to demonstrate a net wealth of at least €2 million. And then the investment which is available now is a requirement of a €1 million investment into an approved investment fund. There were originally other categories of investment that's available on the program, but as mentioned, the program was terminated earlier in February of this year, and so now it's a unique opportunity with the IDLF with an investment of €1 million into the approved investment fund. Unlike other programs, there are very nominal government fees applicable to the application. It's a €1,500 application fee for the family, and then there are due diligence fees payable to an Irish due diligence company. They range from anywhere from about 1,800 euros to 3,000 euros per family application. So it's quite straightforward. We're very transparent on the costing, and from our side, Sable will outline all of those costs to you along with our services. We work very much hand in hand with Pauline and her team to help you to secure all of the paperwork required for an application and ensure a successful submission. I'm going to hand over to Andrew now for him to now drill into the specifics of the actual fund. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Andy, before that. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a shame that I'm here only in 2 dimensions on a screen, but hopefully later in the summer, I'll be making a trip to South Africa and maybe have the opportunity to meet some of you in person. Thank you for joining today. It's always encouraging for us in Ireland, a little country on the western edge of Europe, to find people interested in potentially relocating here. I think we always assume as Irish people who were colonized for 800 years that every other country in the world is better than our own. But the more and more that Pauline and myself and our colleagues work on this particular program, and the more we realize that people are attracted to come to Ireland for the reasons that Sarah has mentioned, in terms of the strength of the economy, the strength of the education system, being part of the European Union. Certainly it gives us a great sense of pride that people recognize Ireland for what it has become over the last 100 years. So just to introduce the Irish Diaspora Loan Fund, which, as Sarah mentioned, is the last option for people to invest, to secure a residency in Ireland. And whilst selfishly that's great for us, clearly, I'm always concerned when people don't have a choice and don't have the ability to compare and contrast. So I'm sorry that the government have terminated the program and have effectively removed that choice from you whilst you're considering this. But I hope after today's webinar and any subsequent conversations we may have, that you'll be reassured that both the scheme and the fund are reputable and operate to the very highest standards. We are an Irish fund. We are governed and regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland, which is the financial regulatory authority here, which in turn implements the European Framework Directive for managing investments in Europe. So we operate at a very high standard of governance. Our board of directors would include a former Prime Minister of Ireland, Mr. John Bruton, a very senior investment manager, Richard Horlick, Ireland's most successful fintech entrepreneur, Terry Clune, who's our chairman and founder, and is the founder of the international financial services group taxback.com. And our chief executive, Joanna Murphy, serves on the board. So the board are responsible not for protecting their interests, but their job is to protect the interests of the shareholders and the investors in the fund. So everything that the board and the various service providers do on a day-to-day basis, and we have a board meeting this afternoon actually, all of the checks and balances are to ensure that investors are treated fairly, equitably, and in a transparent fashion. What we do as a fund is maybe a little different to other investment funds that you may look at, in that we are not structured as an equity-based fund. So we don't invest in other companies and hope that their valuation increases in time. We effectively operate in the same way as a small bank would operate, providing loans to commercial businesses. So we accumulate capital in the fund through the Immigrant Investor Program. We then deploy that capital by way of making senior secured loans into Irish businesses. And we do that in a very conservative fashion. We can talk a little bit more about that. The requirements for the government in terms of making the investment, as Sarah mentioned, it's a minimum of it's €1 million investment that needs to be held for a minimum of 3 years. Our funds are structured as 5-year closed funds. So at the end of 5 years, the fund has to close and all of the shareholders are redeemed. So depending on when a client's approval comes through from the government, they'll invest somewhere between 3 or 5 years. So the maximum term would be 5 years, the minimum would be 3 years. Our job is very simple, really, in the fund. We only have 2 objectives. The first one is to protect the investor's capital. So nobody is incentivized, encouraged, or rewarded to strive for crazy returns in this fund. the more and more that we speak to people who are interested in investing purely to secure their residency status in Ireland, the more convinced we are that their main interest is capital preservation, and are very happy that we take that capital, put it to use, and give it back to them at the end of the term. And we do that in a conservative, low-risk policy. Our second objective is to use that capital to support Irish businesses and to help them grow and expand and ultimately employ more people, in the regions outside of Dublin. So we're able to provide supportive finance that allows us to get very good security. So we will always lend as the senior lender. So we will take a first charge mortgage over the business. And we are lending into owner-operated hotels in beautiful parts of the country, to nursing homes and retirement villages. We can also provide capital to the development of social and affordable housing and to student accommodation. So those are the areas that we can lend into. But every time we do make a loan, we take security, which is typically worth at least 30% more than the amount of the loan that we will provide. So typically a limit of 70% loan to value is what we would aim for. Just some pictures of a small sample of the kind of properties that we would have supported. You can see here, some beautiful hotels, predominantly on the west of Ireland, along what's known as the beautiful Wild Atlantic Way. So the top left here, we have the Delphi Resort, which is an eco-friendly resort in some of the most stunning scenery in Ireland. In the centre at the top is the Eccles Hotel in Western Cork, which is one of the oldest hotels in the country. The Vienna Woods Hotel in the bottom of the middle, a beautiful old Georgian manor that has been significantly extended with finance that we have provided. And then the bottom right-hand side is one of our nursing homes, the Sunhill Nursing Home, which is a state-of-the-art modern facilities for people that are getting on in years. We often talk about COVID. I know, thankfully, it has hopefully left us behind. But I think, the fact that we went through 2 years of a particular crisis globally, it was a great leveler or a great benchmark for countries to see how they performed during COVID. And just as COVID broke out, the OECD conducted a study, and they looked to see, of the members in the OETC, which country would be affected the worst and which would be affected the least based on the strength of the economy and the underlying characteristics. And the OECD predicted that Ireland would be impacted the least in a global pandemic. And that actually was true. And at the end of the pandemic, as this slide would indicate, Bloomberg identified Ireland as being the most resilient, or was able to deal with COVID in the most effective manner. And that really, I think, summarizes the strength of a number of things here in Ireland that are potentially unique. One is the strength of the economy, which is great, which meant that the government was able to support businesses, was able to support workers who had lost their jobs during the pandemic. They had the budget to be able to shore up and ensure the health system here operated very effectively. We also have a very strong sense of community. So that kind of community spirit and looking out for your neighbour is still very prevalent here in Ireland. So as a consequence, we had one of the highest uptakes of vaccinations in the world very quickly, because we all wanted to get back to being social. So I think, and I suppose part of that strength in the economy comes from something that Sarah mentioned earlier, which is the strength of the international multinational companies that are here in ICT, communications and software. We all did this during COVID. We all moved from working in real world to using our laptops and Zoom, etc. So all of that is being developed from here in Ireland. We have a very strong medical device cluster and a huge pharmaceutical and chemical sector as well. So the three industries that were required the most during a global pandemic happen to be the three industries that Ireland does very well at. So as a consequence, we have moved out of COVID and recovered very, very quickly. So our approach is very much, and we're delighted to work with Sable because we find them really professional, share our love of providing good customer service and really going the extra mile to ensure our clients are happy with arguably what could be the biggest decision they may ever make as a family, the decision to relocate, and certainly maybe one of the most material decisions they'll make in terms of investing, because we recognize that €1 million is a very, very significant sum of money. So we work hand in hand with Sarah to ensure that all of our clients who go through the program have access to any and all information they need to help them to make those decisions, and to build trust, because ultimately this is about building a relationship with our clients. Sorry, don't know what happened there. We really try and position ourselves as the concierge desk for Ireland, if that's not too grandiose a statement. So we really find ourselves answering practical questions. This isn't just about the practicalities of an investment fund. We're the first port of call if people want to know, how do I get a new driving license? How do I find a property to live in? How do I get my kids into school? What's the best university? All of those practical considerations. Myself, Pauline, and all of us here in IDLF, working hand in hand with Sarah and her team, will answer all of those practical questions as well. We're very proud of the fact that we have never had an application rejected, so we work to maintain that 100% approval track record. But it's not just about getting an application filed. Our relationship doesn't finish when the investment is made and you receive your stamp for permission for Ireland. We really do like to build that long-term relationship and introduce people who choose to come to Ireland, to introduce them into the wider kind of social and business circles here, and really help people to find a soft landing, so it doesn't feel like they're going to a strange land where they don't know anybody. Last year, we asked all of our clients, and most of our clients would come from the United States, South Africa, and from Hong Kong. Those are the three areas that our clients come from. It's really because, I suppose the first reason here when we asked them why Ireland, it's because we all speak a version of the English language, and that's certainly very helpful for people who are considering relocating. The strength of the economy always comes up, that we are resilient, we're growing fast. The flexibility of the IIP, given that you only have to come for 1 day a year, to hold that as a plan B, but then immediately you can exercise on it for that to become an option to relocate. It is a safe country with a very low crime rate. We're pleased, always pleased as Irish people, to hear that people like us when they come here, and they do actually find us friendly and welcoming. We are a committed part of the European Union and intend to stay so. And I suppose more and more, when you see what's happening around the world, the fact that we have a stable, competent, sensible government that has, since the foundation of the state 100 years ago, consistently been right in the center. Sometimes very slightly right, sometimes very slightly left, but effectively every government since the foundation of the state has had a similar policy framework within which to work, which creates that stability for people to invest in, for people to live in, to educate, etc. Sarah has mentioned the education system, so people are attracted by the education system, and then beyond that, the ability to get an excellent degree from a world-class university, and then to walk into a very highly paid job in Google or Intel or Apple or any of the companies that are employing thousands and thousands of people here. It is, I suppose, a useful permission in that you get your permanent residency status immediately upon approval. So it's not that you have to go through an interim phase first. So that gives you that immediacy. So that was why our clients chose Ireland. We then asked them selfishly, why did they choose us? And this was at a point where they had that choice, that they could have made a charitable donation or invested in a property development project. And these were the answers that we got. And it's always around the attraction of being well regulated, well run, ensuring the safety of the investment, being transparent and open. And, I think our personal measure of success is the fact that we have been recommended by people who have been through the program already with us. So that gives us a great sense of we must be doing something right if somebody has invested and they're happy to recommend us to somebody else. But of course, I would say all of this. My job here is to advise you and tell you why Ireland is great and why IDLF is worth considering. But I would say that, wouldn't I? So we thought it would be interesting and useful for you to hear straight from one of our clients. So Pat and Andre are clients of Sable. They came through the program last year. They have completed their investment. They moved to Ireland 6 weeks ago, and we met up with them last week and brought along a camera just to capture their thoughts about coming to Ireland, what the process was like working through the IIP, what their experience is like here, and would they recommend this to others. So Sarah, maybe you can facilitate that little video.
In London when we were younger, newly married without children, spent 4 years in the UK, had a fantastic time. Went back to SA, had children. Eventually we got them off our payroll and we said, okay, where to from here? It would be lovely to have a similar experience, and we had a few conditions. We don't want to retire at the time. We want to be in a similar time zone, and we must be able to find some kind of employment in English. The introduction came from Sable about the Irish option, and it ticked most of the blocks that we were keen on, and we explored it. Had numerous calls with Sarah to start with, calls with Andrew and with Pauline, numerous Zoom calls. We gathered so much information from those sessions that we finally booked like an exploratory trip. So we arrived for our first visit to Dublin in November of 2021. Had a very fruitful conversation and interaction with the IDLF people, and I must say, very forthcoming with all the information, all the practical issues to get your application in. I must compliment Andrew that any questions I ask you answered, in my mind, honestly and without hiding information. You were upfront with the risks, and so far I've got no regrets.
It's absolutely glorious. We're very fortunate. We had a very soft landing. If you look at the weather, we've hardly had any cloudy days since we've arrived, but I know it's not a permanent situation, but the people have been immensely welcoming and so friendly. We have landed in a village that is really amazing. Everything is almost in walking distance. We've got the ocean right on our doorstep, and it is brilliant. They've got beautiful walkways that we can explore early morning, late in the evening, middle of the day, whenever. It is just amazing. We are very fortunate, and the people are extremely friendly and welcoming. The cleanliness, it's extremely clean and neat and organized. Everything works. Everything is on either on an app, or when you phone, you get somebody at the other end, and the service is great. Our daughter is joining us soon with a job offer in Dublin, so we'll have her close, and hopefully our son will visit soon. We have no doubts and no regrets from moving. They can really try it, and it's not permanent. If it doesn't work for them, they always have the option of going back. But I think once they arrive, they will not want to go back. It is really a lovely experience, and a country that is warm and welcoming and beautiful as well.
We came across to watch the box play Ireland, and Andrew entertained us at the Aviva Stadium, and I must say, if there's ever a good place to lose, it's the Aviva Stadium. Andrew, I must say, I'll always wear green, eh? The different shades of green.
Yeah. So I promise you that we didn't pay Andre and Pat for that lovely testimonial. That was straight from off the cuff their commentary around their experience in Ireland. We've done well, clearly, to convince them to drink Guinness, which is always very welcome. It's a slightly tougher sell to get Andre to change his box green jersey for an Irish green jersey for the rugby, but we're still working on him. And speaking of working, Andre he mentioned there that, being able to apply for work in an English-speaking country was important. And, they are of an age that they don't want to retire yet. So he was concerned whether he would get work. They are in the country just over 6 weeks, and he starts work next week. And just so you don't think that he got a job in the local bar pulling pints of Guinness, he is a senior financial, he's a CFA, he's a chartered financial analyst, and he starts work with an investment bank here next week. So I think that just kind of rounds off their experience, that they have come here. Thankfully, they have no regrets, and they're now starting to put down some roots here. So thanks for your time, Andy. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's a great video, and I assume it was you, Andrew, who videoed it, because it's quite nice when Andre mentions that he's spoken to Sarah, Pauline, and Andrew, because it could have been either me or you. But credit certainly doesn't go to me. I think that the team of the other three on the screen really do make it a pretty easy process for our clients. So that's really good to see. So just in summary, before we sort of close down and then we'll jump in, we've got a few questions. In summary, I think it's pretty obvious why we as a company like Sable, why we like Ireland. It is a superb plan B, very, very flexible, which can lead to a plan A. And I think that's really clearly demonstrated with Andre and Pat, because they're physically living there. I'm currently in Portugal at the moment for 6 months. And the one thing that is really encouraging, it's very difficult to see it when you're sitting in a climate like South Africa, is that these parts of the EU that have got these investor programs, they're in a growth phase. There's a lot of positivity. And there really is life outside these difficult jurisdictions like South Africa. But it's about investing for optionality. And I think that before the Irish program closes, that's probably the last one that you'll have that is English-speaking EU. And I think Sarah did mention it earlier, that access to the full EU, once you eventually do get a passport, as well as the UK, I don't think you can get better than that. So the other thing that's really important, and I was just sort of listening off stage to the presentation, it really is just unbelievable working with IDLF. We've worked with partners all over the world in all sorts of different investment arenas, and to have somebody with the sort of integrity and the work ethic of your team, Andrew and Pauline, is really super, because it is a proper reflection back on our brand. So that's also why we like dealing in Ireland. And then just very quickly, Sarah mentioned it earlier as well. I think what we try and pride ourselves on as a company is to put together a turnkey solution, because if you're going to kick off and you're looking at a plan B that ultimately could lead to a relocation, it's very daunting. Just even moving money nowadays is very difficult. If it's not something that you do every day, it's nice to have somebody who does do it every day, and we can really help with the full service of, right through from visas to travel to moving your money. We can help you if you do relocate with your tax, immigration, tax planning, etc., etc. But more importantly is having a partner on the ground on the other side that absolutely lives the same values as our company, and that's about caring and helping our clients. So, I think the numbers speak for themselves. We've had a really successful relationship with the IDLF. It's just a pity this program is coming to an end, and the approval rate's been good. So I think those are all the positives. So I think it now just leaves us to probably jump into the few questions. And I'm pleased to see there are not that many questions, which is probably a good sign that you guys have covered off very well on your subject matter. So should we fire away? There's a question here from Graham. What are the residency renewal costs after 2 years and then at 5?
So I might ask Pauline if Pauline wants to jump in. So Pauline is our senior project manager and immigration specialist who would effectively work with the client at this stage of the relationship to do those renewals.
Yeah, sure. Lovely to speak with everyone today. To answer that question there, the costs around renewal process at 2 and 5 years. So the costs are very minimal, to be honest. Renewals are actually done online as well, so there's no need to be physically present in Ireland for the renewal stage. The costs would be, I suppose, number one is €300 per residency card. So anybody over the age of 16 would receive a residency card, and that's €300 each for that. Other minimal costs would be you are required to get an affidavit of good character sworn in by a solicitor or lawyer. Minimal charges there, maybe 100 to 200 as well. And that's it. That's all you need to do for renewal at 2 and 5 years, and every 5 years after that as well.
Thanks.
And we
thanks
help
for
you out with that full process
Pauline.
also. We will
Let's jump to a
highlight
question here from Chris. Do you only have to live there
what
full
you need to
time in
provide
year
in it.
5 for the 1 year,
So hopefully that
and
will
then
answer that question.
can one live elsewhere after that?
Yeah, so I'll jump on that one as well. Yes and no would be the answer there. Yes, you do have to be pretty much full-time for the last year. So the 12 months prior to applying for citizenship, you would have to be in the country for those 12 months. Now, they do allow a 6-week period out of the country in the last 12 months if for emergencies, like you have to, go back to your home country for business reasons or family reasons or medical reasons. So, but if you could, to remain in the country for the final 12 months. For the other 4 years that you are accumulating to make up your citizenship time, you are allowed out of the country for 6 weeks of each of those years. But if it's longer than 6 weeks, it is allowed, but you will have to explain the reason why you leave the country, why you've left the country for more than 6 weeks. At any given time, and it's just a matter of an explanation that I had to go for work reasons or family holidays or etc. But it allowed that it's 6 weeks or more than 6 weeks if needed. And as Sarah was mentioning earlier, there is a points system involved as well. So to prove your residency in Ireland, you have to provide like proofs of address, like bank statements or mortgage statements.
I think
or
really
rent,
once you start traveling towards
statements
the passport,
to prove
that
you actually do have physical presence in Ireland.
But thanks for that answer. And then another one from Chris as well, and this is probably for you, Andrew, is around the investment. What would one's growth be on the €1 million after the 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, and that's what this is the bad news. Really, there isn't, or you shouldn't have an expectation of a return of your investment. You should expect to get your investment returned. The way I mentioned earlier, that the way the fund is structured is simply to provide low-cost finance to support Irish businesses and to earn sufficient interest to cover the ongoing costs of running the regulated fund. So the fund should effectively look after itself, but it doesn't offer return on investment. So that's the negative. I suppose the positive is because the fund is earning interest and that's covering the fees and expenses associated with the fund. There isn't an annual fee or an annual management charge to the investors. So you shouldn't see your investment dwindle away. It should remain fixed, and at the end of the period, you get your capital returned. So we always say to people very clearly, this is not the investment that your financial advisor would congratulate you for making. But people aren't making, and again, and we see this all the time, they're not making this investment for financial return reasons. They're making it as a means to an end, and the return is getting their residency status. What we ensure is that the capital is preserved, and then you have the confidence of getting it back. Now, clearly, as a shareholder in the fund, if the fund generates a surplus at the end when it's winding up, well, then it's possible that a dividend will be distributed to the shareholders. but certainly there's no strategy to strive for returns in the fund. It is
thanks for that answer, Andrew. I think and in summary, I mean, that really is the case on most of these programs. I mean, it's pretty mercenary. The governments are looking for inward investment, and in return, you get a residency option that could lead to citizenship. I have to say, I don't think there's really a program anymore where there's a great investment. Portugal used to be relatively good, but that program's come to an end. But in the last 2 years, I have to say that those investments were not really stacking up as investments. So I think that's absolutely right. It's a means to an end, and what our strategy is just to try and make sure that we mitigate any risk of a loss of your capital. So that's why we work with the likes of the IDLF. I think we've got a question here. Can you get Irish residency if you have Portuguese residency? I think that's probably a Sarah answer. Sarah?
So yes, you can. There's no requirements if you hold residency somewhere else that it's mutually exclusive. So subject to really the type of residency that you hold. So in Portugal, for example, if you're a golden visa resident holder and you are fulfilling your minimum days on average of 7 days a year, then there's no requirement for you to be living there. So you can hold residency somewhere else. So you could also hold a stamp 4 permission in Ireland and retain it with 1 day a year spent in Ireland and still hold your residency in South Africa. It's important to understand that residency in this context is not the same as tax residency. So your residential residency or the residency permit that you hold have no true bearing on your tax residency status. That will be determined by the country to which you are domiciled or spending more than 183 days a year, which is when that would trigger that. So you can hold multiple residencies. It's quite common for people to have potentially, your citizenship in South Africa and then residency in Europe and also in Mauritius, for example. You can also hold dual nationality. So when you have decided to naturalize as a citizen, if you want to, you're not required to renounce your South African citizenship. And if a country allows dual nationality, they will nearly always allow multi-nationality as well. So if you hold already UK and South African citizenship, for example, but you now post-Brexit want to work towards Irish citizenship to open that door to Europe again, then you absolutely could hold all 3 nationalities.
Great, thanks.
Just a point to add to that, if I might. So Ireland sits outside of the Schengen agreement. So as a resident in Portugal, but not a citizen of Portugal and therefore Europe, as a resident, you wouldn't have automatic rights to work in Ireland, for example. You could certainly travel here, but you wouldn't have the right to work in Ireland. You would have to apply for a work permit to do that. So that's, I think, the stamp 4 permission in Ireland is an Irish program, and therefore it's very focused on allowing people to come here and to work and live, but you don't get that reciprocal arrangement necessarily throughout Europe.
Thanks, Andrew. Chris, I see your comments in the side there saying, I don't think you can hear Andrew Parrish's sound. We're all getting it, so we will send a copy of the webinar to you, and you'll definitely be able to hear it. It just might be a problem on your side. But Chris's last question here is, would I be able to open up my business in Ireland and still run it in SA servicing South African clients? Andrew, that's, I think, one for you.
Yeah, that's and apologies, Chris, if you can't hear me, but hopefully the recording will answer the question. But the answer is yes, you can, of course. We have clients that have business interests in South Africa that have relocated here to Ireland and are able to work perfectly well. And this, as Andre said in the video, the fact that we have a pretty similar time zone means there's not a huge disruption if you're trying to work through the 2 jurisdictions.
Great, thanks. So Chris, if you didn't hear Andrew, in essence, the answer is yes, you can do it. And time zone makes it also practically a lot easier. So, yeah, thanks, everyone. I think we can probably wrap up now. I think it's been very informative. And I'd just like to thank all of you once again for taking almost an hour out of your day to sit and listen. And it was actually very nice to have a live human example of two clients who've actually moved over. I think that just adds a bit of spice into the whole thing. And I think before we close off, maybe I should just ask the three panelists if there's any closing comments. Let's start with you, Pauline, if there's anything.
Sure. No, it's just lovely to speak with everybody again today, and also just to say it's been a pleasure working with Sable the last couple of years. Myself and Sarah work very well
Thanks
together,
very much. And Andrew,
hand in hand,
you?
looking after
No
the
comments
clients and
about the
putting their
rugby?
applications
Yeah, just
definitely
to
in safe hands with Sable.
Yeah,
and
I'll keep my
hopefully
mouth shut
ourselves.
about rugby this time. Well, it's all to play for later this year, but we'll see. But yeah, again, it's been a pleasure to speak to everybody today. We look forward, hopefully, to meeting some of you in person in the coming months. We're always very happy to take questions. I'm sure Andre and Pat would be happy if anybody wanted to speak directly to them to make sure that we weren't bribing them to say nice things. So please reach out through Sarah. Or as our contact details are here, we'd be very happy to help. And we're delighted, as always, to work with our partners in South Africa in Sable. So thanks, Andy.
Sarah,
and thanks, Sarah.
any wise words from you?
I'm not sure of wise words, but I would just say that this is really a superb option to secure that plan B. Even if not all family members potentially would opt to physically relocate to Ireland. If there is one family member that could turn their stamp 4 into Irish nationality and citizenship, and you've got the means to be able to open up that door, I just think it's a superb opportunity. It's also something that you can do now while the program's available, and just keep it ticking over in the background. It doesn't have exorbitant government fees to complete your renewals, and it just, as Andrew said earlier, it provides optionality. So you might not be looking to leave South Africa. I mean, most of my clients are not looking to leave South Africa. We live in a wonderful country. But at the same time, when you're thinking about career prospects, or you're thinking about education opportunities, and you're thinking about safety and security, or being in a location with good flight lift to be able to enjoy the rest of Europe in the summer months, then it really is a superb option. So I would just say, definitely take this program under consideration. You've only got a few months to be able to decide whether it's something you want to pursue. And if you do want to talk about it in more detail, just please reach out to me by email, by phone, and we can always set up secondary calls with Andrew and Pauline too.
Thank you very much. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sarah. I actually had the privilege, we hosted the South African Rugby Legends. They played against Portugal this last weekend, and we spent a week with them in Portugal. And one of the players during the golf day, we were just chatting at one of the holes, and he said the reason he did something, and I won't mention names or program, it was for him about creating a legacy for his children. And I think that in an uncertain world, I always say to people, get as many passports, driver's licenses, and bank accounts as you can get, because they're all very difficult to get. And but it is all about creating freedom of movement and optionality in a crazy world that we live. So we certainly don't advocate for people to leave South Africa, but what we do, we see a lot of South Africans who make really bad decisions when they're looking at their offshore plans. And we're always coming out of what I just call a monopoly money kind of economy. The rand is really radically undervalued, particularly at the moment with all the negative sort of political stuff that's going on. So one can't really make a bad decision and not feel the pain of a bad decision when investing offshore from South Africa. So we just always say to people, take care, don't rush these decisions. They're massive decisions. And please chat to professional people who do this on a regular basis, and we do it every day. We have a very strong physical presence in South Africa, in the UK, in Europe, and in Australia. Those are the jurisdictions where we operate. So, we're not just flying in and selling a dream. We really are here with our team abroad as well as in South Africa to stand by your side. So hopefully if you do decide to go ahead, please chat to us. And once again, to you guys at the IDLF, thanks so much. And I hope you all have a good rest of the day.